From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. Hey, it's Dina. The Click Here team is taking a break from producing brand new episodes this month so we can get ahead on some stories we want to bring you in 2025. So we started going through the archives, and we thought there was one story we should return to. It's about what worries some people about TikTok. Congress passed a law earlier this year that said TikTok was a national security threat. And the law demands that ByteDance, TikTok's mainland Chinese parent company, either has to sell the app or face a ban in the U.S. TikTok, for its part, maintains that the ban violates the First Amendment rights of its 170 million American users. The story we did back in September took a look at what might have lawmakers so worried. It's about how the Chinese Communist Party could use the app's algorithm to influence American audiences. And we decided to bring it to you again now because ByteDance has just asked the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia to temporarily freeze the ban, in hopes that the Supreme Court might agree to hear the case. The ban takes effect on January 19th. Take a listen. Looking back on it, Esma Memtimin had a feeling that her TikTok video might be taken down. Though at first blush, it didn't seem particularly sinister. There was no violence, no swear words. There wasn't even dialogue. Just this music that you're hearing right now and a series of jump cuts of young women putting these small square stickers in public places in Munich. One on a lamppost, another on a payphone or a snack machine. These were stickers Esma and her friends had made themselves to send a message.
We've decided to go through Munich, and everywhere we go, we stick like a sticker of that and then film it.
This is Esma, and the sticker that they were plastering around the city said this very basic thing: Google Uyghur, or you may have heard it pronounced Uyghur. Esma is Uyghur, a Muslim minority that has been fighting for autonomy from China for years, and the sticker was supposed to spark some curiosity, to get people to learn for themselves what the Chinese government was doing to Uyghurs. But TikTok took the video down. Basically, they said, you went against our community rules.
Yeah, but it was something super hilarious. It didn't make sense because they said something like it's aggressive or insulting or whatever.
She sent us a screenshot of the TikTok notice. It actually said that the video was taken down because it showed violent behavior and criminal activities, even though they were literally just putting stickers around town. So they decided to make another video. This one pointed people to a trove of leaked documents that revealed details about the archipelago of prisons in northwestern China, where the Chinese have been detaining Uyghurs. China has claimed for years that they're just vocational camps.
These are the faces China never intended us to see.
This is from a BBC story about the hacked documents.
From inside its system of mass incarceration in Xinjiang.
Esma's second video told viewers where to go online to see the files for themselves.
The files consist of over 10 gigabytes of speeches, protocols, spreadsheets, and images.
TikTok took that video down too. Esma thought maybe if she edited the video, it would stay up. So she removed words TikTok sometimes doesn't like. Words like murder and sexual abuse, both of which the leaked papers suggest China was doing to its Uyghur prisoners.
And then it got taken down again.
This time TikTok said it contained too much personal information. This was the third time that Esma's videos have been taken down for what felt like nonsensical reasons. Now, as a general matter, social media is all about regular people like Esma making their voices heard. But this social media company didn't seem interested in the things Esma had to say. And she started to wonder if that had to do not with her videos, but with TikTok's parent company. TikTok is owned by a Chinese company called ByteDance, headquartered in Beijing. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and this is Click Here, a podcast about all things cyber and intelligence. We tell true stories about the people making and breaking our digital world. And today, the trouble with TikTok and its Chinese parent company. For years now, questions have swirled about whether the Chinese Communist Party has a say in what appears on the popular video app. We talked to Esma, who appears to be a victim of exactly that, and look at a new report that seems to confirm that there's something odd about the algorithm at TikTok. Stay with us.
Do nice guys really finish last? I'm Tim Harford, host of the Cautionary Tales podcast, and I'm exploring that very question. Join me for my new mini-series on the art of fairness. From New York to Tahiti, we'll examine villains undone by their villainy, monstrous self-devouring egos, and accounts of the extraordinary power of decency. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
From Recorded Future News, this is Click Here. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. Esma was born in southern Germany, and for the longest time, she didn't know any kids who looked like she did or talked like she did.
I grew up in a small town, and there are no Uyghurs at all here.
Her parents had left northwestern China in the 1990s and settled in a suburb of Munich where Esma learned German but spoke her parents' language at home. Her parents went out of their way to make the house reflect their culture, too.
So we have a lot of very cultural books with a lot of, I don't know the word in English right now, I think tales.
Yeah, fables or tales?
Yes, exactly. So my mom brought a lot of books, and then in general, more oriental vibes, a lot of carpets, they're very Uyghur and stuff. The whole vibe is just Uyghur.
In her small town, though, Esma said people didn't know what to make of her.
They were just saying, oh, okay, so you're from Uruguay. Or they were saying, okay, yeah, well, then you're Chinese.
It wasn't until Esma happened to find a local girl on Instagram who was also Uyghur that her life began to shift.
It was the first kind of moment where I realized, oh wow, there are other people like me. It felt like I finally had some hope that there are other girls as well and other Uyghurs as well in my age.
She reached out and they became friends, and she realized that there were hundreds of Uyghurs in Munich and lots of people her age, which she loved.
That already felt very wholesome to just know I don't have to explain my culture and my background to them. I can just be myself and they know where I'm from and who I am.
And as she spent more time with fellow Uyghurs, she had a sort of political awakening. She went to protests, started learning more about what the Chinese authorities were doing to Uyghurs in China.
I felt very inspired and very motivated to do something. And after that, it really kind of got started.
And she and her friends wanted to get that narrative out there, to educate people. And the best way to do that, they thought, was TikTok.
We knew that even back then in 2022, TikTok was the platform if you want to go viral and if you want to have a bigger audience.
And they had a great idea for a series of TikToks they were sure would resonate with Gen Z. Esma was 18 at the time.
And our generation, Gen Z, is all about self-presentation on social media. So I thought about a campaign using mirrors because our generation is addicted to how we look, and we look at mirrors and in our camera the whole time, right?
So Esma applied for a grant from a German Uyghur organization to try to get some funding for a kind of educational art installation that would travel around Germany.
So the whole idea was to get 5 mirrors, and then on those mirrors to place different kind of quotes and a QR code under those quotes. And for example, one quote was, "I beg them to kill me," which is a quote of an ex-detainee, an ex-Uyghur detainee. And if you scan the QR code, you'll be directed to a website that is explaining what is going on.
Each mirror would focus on a different topic related to the Uyghurs' plight. They sent in the proposal, and it was accepted, and they got $2,000. And they went straight to work. They posted the project on TikTok, and this one didn't get taken down. But it also didn't get much traction. So they just kept trying to dream up videos that would get traction. And that's what led to that sticker video and hacked documents video we talked about before, the ones that were taken down. We sent TikTok the videos and asked if they could tell us why they were removed, because they clearly weren't violent or personal as the removal notices had said. A TikTok spokesman did comment on other parts of the story, but they said they couldn't get us a response on Esma's videos by press time. Esma is pretty sure the issue isn't community rules. It's that she was focused on Uyghur issues. A lot of people have wondered if they're just imagining that things seem a little different on TikTok. And when we come back, a new report makes the case that we weren't so crazy to think so.
They're suppressing anything that could be damning to the CCP, whether users like it or not.
Stay with us. Joel Finkelstein is the director and chief research scientist at the Network Contagion Research Institute at Rutgers University. Essentially, he studies the spread of contagious online threats.
Whether it's crypto scams, anti-Semitism, Hindu phobia, public health threats.
And the way Joel sees it, these kinds of threats are manageable if they're identified early, before they pick up momentum. And you also sort of mix psychology and neuroscience into all of that.
Well, that's guilty as charged. So I'm a neuroscientist by training. And I think I just noticed a ton of parallels between how the brain works and what's happening on social media platforms.
Neuroscientists and psychologists who specialize in the teenage brain have been studying social media for years, out of concern that the rapidly developing adolescent brain may be uniquely vulnerable to what these platforms serve up. And as part of that, if algorithms are censoring what young people see on platforms like TikTok, that's an important thing to know.
We know that the platform could be used for mass indoctrination, for sparking riots, etc. But it's really hard to show that that's happening algorithmically.
TikTok says no one is tweaking the algorithm, that the things that go viral do so organically. But the only way to prove that is by looking at the algorithm itself, which TikTok says is secret. So in late 2023, Joel and his team came up with a way to assess it indirectly by comparing content on particular topics and then seeing how much of it appears on TikTok versus other platforms like Instagram.
For instance, like I can look up Trump on both, and I could look up Biden on both, and I could look up, I don't know, who's the most famous musician you know? Eminem.
Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. I could look up Taylor Swift, right?
So they did that. They looked up political hashtags like Joe Biden and Donald Trump and pop culture references like Barbie. And very quickly, they spotted a pattern.
You can look those folks up, and the basic ratio is 2 occurrences of that hashtag on Instagram for every 1 occurrence on TikTok.
Essentially, every time Joe Biden got mentioned on TikTok, he'd get twice as many shout-outs on Instagram. Same was true of Donald Trump. It worked with the Barbie movie, too. And this 2-to-1 ratio makes a lot of sense. Instagram is twice the size of TikTok, so it stands to reason that it would have about twice as much content.
And that's true both for politics, and it's true for popular culture. And that's true almost across the board.
So that was Joel's baseline. Roughly speaking, there should be about twice as much content about a topic on Instagram than there is on TikTok. And then they started to look at things the Chinese Communist Party saw as hot-button issues.
Taiwan, the Dalai Lama, Tibet. We looked at the Uyghurs, of course. And we also looked at foreign issues which we knew had an interest to the CCP. We looked up Israel and Palestine. We looked up hashtags related to India and Pakistan. And we looked up hashtags related to Ukraine.
And that 2-to-1 ratio that they tracked when you looked at Biden or Barbie was completely different when you looked at issues the CCP cared about. In every case, they found that there was a lot less content about these issues on TikTok than on a similar platform like Instagram.
And these were not minor differences. It wasn't 2-to-1 on the Dalai Lama. It was something like 50-to-1 on these kinds of hashtags, where you'd have 50 times more of this content on Instagram than you would on TikTok.
That is, every time the Dalai Lama got mentioned on TikTok, he got 50 more shouts on Instagram. And the results for Tiananmen Square, the site of the 1989 crackdown on student demonstrators, showed a ratio of 81-to-1. For every one time Tiananmen was mentioned on TikTok, there were 81 more instances of it on Instagram. And the term Hong Kong protests, even worse, 181-to-1.
There's so much more interest on Instagram for anything that's damaging to the CCP, and it's like a desert of that information on TikTok.
On the flip side, content on TikTok about things the Chinese leadership cares about and wants to promote, well, there was lots of that. Take the issue of Kashmir. For decades now, China has been fighting India over the border region of Kashmir. On TikTok, the pro-China hashtag Stand with Kashmir was 600 times more likely to appear than it was on Instagram. The ratios were so dramatically different that Joel and the team concluded the only way that could happen is if the Chinese leadership had some say in what was appearing on TikTok, that its content moderation had a little help from the CCP, or maybe a lot.
I could take this report to Xi Jinping and I could say, listen, if this is a deliberate effort, I give you an A+. You have done a terrific job. These are very sizable impacts.
We asked TikTok about this, and their spokesman, Michael Hughes, said that the report's methodology was flawed to reach a predetermined false conclusion. And he added that the report hadn't been peer-reviewed. So we reached out to 3 different researchers in the field to ask about the report. And they said while they might quibble with some parts of the methodology, the report's conclusions tracked what they had found in their own research. The Department of Justice and the National Security Council at the White House found the data compelling enough that they used what Joel discovered to help gin up support for a bill that would require ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, to sell off its stake or face being banned in the App Store. And then this other thing happened after the Rutgers report came out. The analytical tool that Joel's team had used to do their analysis, TikTok straight up removed it.
They did that without any announcement. This was a major feature. And they did it surreptitiously, and they certainly didn't tell us it was down. So after saying that the methodology was bogus, they then stopped the capacity for the rest of the research community to be able to examine them in this fashion, which is, I think, as much an admission of a problem as one could make, right?
Earlier this year, Joel and his team decided to try to find a different way to prove that the CCP was manipulating TikTok's content. They created 40 sock puppet accounts, essentially fake accounts made to look and act like a real person.
We wanted to see what could be returned when we looked up topics that were sensitive to the Chinese across these platforms. And what we found was that when we looked up Tiananmen Square, especially when we looked up Uyghurs, it was absolute remarkable disparities between the platforms.
If you looked up Uyghur or Uyghur on YouTube or Instagram, you'd see mainstream news about forced detention and abuse. You might even see those videos that Esma Memtimim and her friends dreamed up. But if you looked it up on TikTok, you'd be served up videos about Uyghur culture and music.
There's a lot of cultural influencers that are frontier influencers talking about how beautiful China is. There's a ton of influencers that are showing out the dance and the dress of Uyghurs, their culture, their food, how wonderful things are. And this is pretty profane. I mean, it's like having an advertisement about how good the cheeseburgers are at Auschwitz.
If one of these sock puppets looked up Tiananmen, same thing. The cultural history of the area, or a focus on Mao's mausoleum that sits in its center. Not a word about the tanks that rolled in 35 years ago.
It was absolute remarkable, disparities between the platforms.
None of this surprises Fergus Ryan. He's a senior China analyst at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, which does research for the Aussie Department of Defense. And he's been studying TikTok for years, an effort, he says, that has gotten more challenging over time.
When the app was first expanding around the world, its censorship efforts were quite blunt. But since there has been a lot of scrutiny on the app, it's become more subtle and very difficult to detect.
Fergus said it isn't a stretch to think that ByteDance would have to respond if leaders in Beijing objected to something on the platform.
All Chinese tech firms are required to assist the government in intelligence work if asked, and that means that it can't realistically refuse requests from the Chinese government.
The CCP, by law, can tell Chinese companies what to do, and people who disobey them or seem to go their own way have a tendency to disappear. The founder of the B2B business, Alibaba, a guy named Jack Ma, is a perfect example. Alibaba is massive, and Jack Ma was very prominent, not just in China, but all around the world. But after he criticized the Chinese government, he simply disappeared from view. He returned to the country in March 2023 as a teacher, not a businessman. The point here is that the U.S. government just doesn't hold that kind of power over social media platforms like Instagram or Facebook. And Fergus Ryan says that's an important distinction.
The CCP's ability to directly influence the platform means that TikTok, it's not just another social media app. It's a strategic asset for the Chinese state.
Which is why, he said, TikTok is different from other platforms. It's pretty clear it isn't just audience preference or likes that are driving content. Some other mysterious force appears to be.
TikTok plays a significant role in subtly shaping how people, particularly younger users, perceive China and its government policies.
This isn't just conjecture. Recently, Joel Finkelstein's team led a survey to see what TikTok users think about China.
We directly asked subjects, what is Tiananmen best known for? Is it best known as a great tourist attraction? China's human rights record, what do you think of that? You think it's pretty good, or you think it's an awful record?
The results? Joel said TikTok users were 33% more likely to believe that Tiananmen Square was just a tourist attraction than people on other social media platforms. Remember Esma Memtimim, the Uyghur in Germany, at the beginning of the episode? She's now the co-founder of something called the Uyghur Youth Initiative. It's a nonprofit aimed at educating people about human rights abuses against Uyghurs. And you'd think, after all the videos TikTok took down, that Esma and her friends would have given up on it. But instead, they figured out how to jujitsu the algorithm, how to get around the censorship and still take advantage of TikTok's reach.
Because we were thinking we wanted to use China's weapons against them. We want to use their toxic algorithm for our benefits.
And they've been doing exactly that. You could say they're using the beating heart of social media against itself. They have burrowed their content inside TikTok trends, so their videos go viral.
Trends are literally the way you can trick the algorithm. If you hop on a trend, then TikTok will want to push your videos because TikTok knows that this trend is getting a lot of attention. And then we just try to use those trends for our cause.
So they make videos that echo a current trend, and then once they're posted, they get swept up into a larger tide, making them harder to spot and harder to censor. Like this new meme that swept the platform late last year.
We're librarians. Of course I know what book you're looking for when you just give me a color.
I'm a sound engineer. Of course I'm going to have you do weird stuff when you're recording vocals. Can you give me that in a whisper, please?
We're actors. Of course we don't know the difference between make-believe and reality.
Millions of people were sharing this new meme format. So Esma and her colleagues grabbed their phones and adapted the meme to their very Uyghur messages.
We're Uyghurs. Of course nobody can guess my nationality. We're Uyghurs. Of course we need 4 hours to prepare one dish. We're Uyghurs. Of course we don't have basic human rights.
It was super, super improvised. We were done filming after 5 or 10 minutes. And we just knew that we wanted to make it very sarcastic, and we wanted to smile, and we wanted to make people wonder.
We are Uyghurs. Of course China is selling our organs.
We're Uyghurs. Of course we don't know if pyramids are alive or not.
One time we wanted to kind of focus more on human rights, and then for the other scene we decided to go more into the cultural aspect.
They posted it on TikTok and the crowds went wild. Almost right away, they had nearly 1 million views.
We were like, okay, well, I think this is it now. I think it's not going to be more than that. It cannot be more than 1 million. Like, that's already insane.
She went to sleep, woke up the next morning.
And it just kept growing. And that was super insane, especially getting the reactions of my parents, who are not very used to social media.
To date, their TikTok video has had nearly 6 million views. So, if, as researchers suggest, TikTok's parent company and the CCP are using an algorithm to tamp down content they don't agree with, people like Esma are going to have to keep coming up with creative ways to fool it.
Our social media team, they have it kind of in their intuition. They just do. They just kind of understand. They speak the TikTok language, kind of.
This is Click Here. Today's episode was produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gaida, and me, Dina Temple-Raston. It was edited by Karen Duffin, fact-checked by Darren Ankrum, and contains original music by Ben Livingston, with some other music by Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, and our illustrator is Megan Goff. Martin Peralta is our sound designer and engineer. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News. We'll be back on Friday with Mic Drop.
Looking for more of the cybersecurity and intelligence coverage you get on Click Here? Then check out our sister publication, The Record, from Recorded Future News. You'll get breaking cyber news from reporters in New York, Washington, London, and Kyiv, among others. And you'll see for yourself why it attracts hundreds of thousands of page views every month. Just go to therecord.media.